And we are live. Guys, I'd like to welcome you to the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast. My name is Jay Angel, and I'm going to be your host for tonight's festivities. With me tonight, I have a lady who's done just about everything as far as bass fishing goes. I've wanted to have her on for a long time. I finally got around to asking her. She fishes the LBAA, the East Texas Lady Anglers, WBT, the BFL. And what really impressed me is she also fished Team USA, where she went to Canada. You know, one thing I love interviewing Southerners who go up north and excel at smallmouth bass fishing. What is it? Brock Mosley went up there and got a second. Whew. Rhonda Pitts went up there and caught a giant. I fished smallmouth bass since I was like a young kid. It was the first fish I ever ventured out to fish by myself. And, I caught smallmouth bass. Rhonda Pitts goes New York and catches. I don't even have enough room. How big was that smallmouth bass, Rhonda?
It was 723.
Jeez. I have interviewed literally hundreds of bass fishermen, and I love talking smallmouth. I think I've talked to two other guys. They were both guides, and one of them caught an 8-pounder in a small lake in northern Wisconsin. Another one caught an 8-pounder in a small lake in northern Michigan. You go to one of the heaviest fished bass fishing areas in the United States. Why don't you tell the people where that was?
So we were on the St. Lawrence River in upstate New York.
Where they have 3 tournaments a day? Where the Elite Series goes, and all the other big tournaments, and even small tournaments. Tournaments of all different sizes. Rhonda goes there and catches a 7-pound brute.
Yeah, it was an amazing catch. It life changing. Remembering lifetime memory of all times. Yeah, I will never forget that day.
Most of the 6-pound smallmouth I've caught have not hit really hard. Does this thing hit hard?
Well, just like a big largemouth, it just kind of picked it up. The line got heavy, and I was like, first I was like, I'm not hung up, and then I felt a little wiggle on the end of the line. I was like, I am not hung up.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Damn it, another snag.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it was. And then, she come up and saw the boat, and it was like, oh, I'm not going in there.
I hooked into a smallmouth bass one time that was so big, and I was in probably a mid-sized stream in northern Michigan, and that thing tried to jump, and it tried to jump, and it tried to jump a third time. It's the hell with it, and it turned around and went back down because it couldn't get its whole body out of the water.
Yeah.
Did your big get you a good jump?
Yeah, no, she was so big. She was like, she couldn't get herself out of the water. She come up and kind of put her head on the top, but no, she couldn't get her whole self out of the water.
Were you fishing a tournament when you caught this brute?
No, we were just up there fun fishing.
Oh, that does my heart good. In Arkansas, a person from Arkansas,
yeah,
goes all the way to New York to catch smallmouth. Wow, that's dedication, Ron. I love it.
Well, we can't catch them here, not like that anyway. There's some places in Arkansas that have some smallmouth, but they're not 6-pounders and 7-pounders. So, you go where they are.
I bet you get some big ones in the Buffalo River.
The Buffalo River has some, but they don't get very big. No.
Okay. I know I've caught them in there, but never, well, I only had, a few hours to fish. I was visiting my mom. Yeah. I don't want to spend the whole time visiting my mom.
Yeah. Greer's Ferry Lake in central Arkansas has smallmouth because it's so deep. But, if you catch a 4-pounder, that's a whopper.
Well, Greer's Ferry Lake also has, I don't know if it's a current walleye record, but it used to have a world record walleye out of the.
Yeah.
It might still be a world record, but.
Yeah. And the Little Red River that runs out of Greer's Ferry has the world record. I believe it's brown trout and maybe rainbow.
World record brown trout. That's a kind of accomplishment.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The Red River is championship trout rivers. It's a trout river.
Oh yeah, the river that goes out of Norfolk also is.
Yeah.
Dang. Why don't we talk about this? So, what were you using for bait when you caught this giant?
So I was using just a straight green pumpkin juvie crawl that's made by Great Lakes Finesse.
Okay.
It's basically a tube that looks like a crawdad. So I have one here. Let me see if I can get it up where everybody can see it. I'm not very good at this. So go back over here. All right. So this is it. You can see this is where you tie on. Here's your hook. And then this one is actually got the orange on the bottom.
Wow.
For you. So, and then you can see it. This is the profile here. Get it up here for you. There you go.
So that doesn't
And,
have any
it looks
doesn't have any rubber like a normal jig bass jig would have.
no, it's like a tube. So if you take it apart, I get it apart. So this right here,
Oh, that's definitely a tube jig. I love that. Yeah.
tube jig. So you just take that and you shove it up in there. I'm really bad with the camera. Shove that hook all the way up in there and then pull it out the top, and that's your juvie crawl.
Man, I have caught so many smallmouth bass on tubes,
Yeah.
but the tubes weren't quite as complicated as that. That's a nice
Well,
that's
and
a nice little bait right there.
if I can get it back together, you can actually text pose this if you're in a lot of heavy cover. I was actually fishing a laydown, so you can take it and pull the crawl over the top of the hook, and then you can you can text pose it through the
Okay.
through the top of the jig. So
That's
it
nice.
would work down south also.
That would be nice. We have a comment from Gene Elkins. He said the real Rhonda Pitts.
Oh, hey, Mr. Gene, how are you?
I love it when people, guys, if you're sitting here watching, just ask a question or make a comment.
Please ask a question or a comment. Love to hear from everybody.
We got over 5,000 views on that, on the couple of posts that you and I made. So
Yeah.
So let's hope some people, come in because I was working this week. I could not get away on Wednesday, guys. That's why I have to do it on Thursday. Normally I broadcast on Wednesdays. I might have to change because, of course, my job is changing. So, okay. So you mostly like to use tubes, or?
Actually, during the Pan Am, I used a wacky worm.
I can't contain my excitement.
Yes. So while I was on the St. Lawrence River fishing, I was up there with my friend and sponsor Will Clute, Gajo Baits, and Will fixed me up with a whole box full of all kinds of plastics and swim baits and you name it. And he's got a special color wacky worm, and it's kind of I believe it's like a green pumpkin smoke. And the first day out during actual tournament, we didn't have any electronics because our original boat broke down, so they had to send a secondary boat. Had zero electronics on it, and I said, well, we're just fixing to go old school and we're going to go to work. And I learned some tricks with Will fishing on the St. Lawrence River with the wacky worm, and I tied that green pumpkin smoke on there, and Emily and I came in with almost 10 pounds that day.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so
okay, so wacky, boy, I have used wacky rigs extensively, but boy, I can't even think of a situation where I would use it in moving water. Why don't you explain how a wacky worm in moving water is different than still water?
So there's an actual trick that I learned on the St. Lawrence River. If you're in a lot of current, you can just take your wacky, just take your rod and flip your bait out there in the current. Click your bail over and just sit there and do this. Don't reel, don't don't do anything. You just do this in the current and they will clobber it.
Okay. Okay. Now I was thinking you'd probably be throwing it into eddies and stuff to where you can just.
Yeah, you can throw it across the eddies and pull it back through. But if you're in a lot of current, because the St. Lawrence River has a lot of current in several
Lots of current,
places,
yes.
lots of current. And I actually picked that up from our friend Joe up there in Aquasasne, and that I noticed that's what he was doing. He would just, kind of toss it out there in just kind of in the middle of the current, and he'd just sit there and do this, and then all of a sudden, "Woo," and there it is.
You know
And
what,
so,
what I learned. I was in the Air Force, geez, a million years ago. But I would slip in those little 16th ounce jigs right in the middle of a current seam.
yeah,
When two currents are coming together, I'd say just slip it right in there, man. Just slip it right in there. And,
yeah,
and people would say, how can you get such a small jig down? I said that's why you got to sneak it in between two currents, or throw it into a backwater eddy, or if in back of a big rock where the water's.
yeah. Well, and another thing when you're in a lot of current like that we've learned is, down south we always cast upstream,
Yes.
and let the current bring your bait back to you. Well, you can't do that on the St. Lawrence River because it'll drive your bait straight down into the rocks and you're instantly hung. So what you do is you kind of cast like straight out in front of you and then let it carry you. And
Okay.
and then that way, and even so, when you do that and when your bait gets downstream, you don't have to reel it in. You just sit there and do that motion, you know
Interesting.
and,
Interesting, because we use the quarter jigs. You cast them up a little bit and work, 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 work,
yeah,
work, 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 work. Gets down to about there, pull it in. Work, 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 work. You know,
yeah.
but that was just how I did it.
Hmm.
One thing I've learned doing this show and guiding for so many years, whatever works for you, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think there are any absolutes in fishing, except you're
No,
absolutely never going to catch anything sitting on your couch.
that's the only thing. You have to kind of let the fish tell you what they want to do that day too.
Yes, even though I do run a podcast and I want people to sit on their couch and watch my podcast, but man, I'll tell you, there are so many different ways you can catch fish. Smallmouth bass. You know, in a northern lake, last couple of times I've been up north, we caught tons of them on Ned rigs.
I started saying Ned rig is another deadly bait to use.
Now, would you catch them on a Ned rig in a river like you were fishing?
You have to be. That's when you're going to fish the eddies and things more because you don't want to get the head of that Ned down in those rocks because it'll hang you up quick.
Yeah.
If you're on Mille Lacs or if you're on Lake Erie, throw that sucker all day. Matter of fact, I've thrown one on Mille Lacs all day, and yeah, especially if you can get around the reefs and stuff.
I bet your arms hurt by the end of the day.
Oh yeah, yeah. So and I don't know what it is about dead sticking, but a lot of
Yeah.
times you could just dead stick that bait in there and just let it sit. And if you can have the patience to not fiddle with it, because like I said, even if you're not moving the rod, if there's wind that day, if there's boat traffic going back and forth, there's current in that water that you're really not seeing. So the water's actually moving those baits underwater that you really don't know is moving, and sometimes less and more.
I agree with you, and that's very hard for me to not work a bait.
Yeah. It is. It's hard to sit there and just let it sit. I was in South Texas this weekend at the Women's Outdoor Media Association She Never Quit event, and the ranch we were on the G2 ranch, and we were fishing in the afternoon on the ranch pond, and one of them anyway, they got three. And so I had just taken Cincos and Texas rigged them. No
Mhm.
weights or anything, because I wanted everybody to catch fish, but I didn't want them to have to worry about hanging up or, hooking or, all of the fun stuff. And I had a lady from Croatia caught her very first fish. She had never held a rod before in her life. And caught it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a really great weekend. And, and and that's the thing is, there are certain baits that you have to know the technique and you have to know the cadence and you have to you have to know what you're doing. But if you've got a Texas rig plastic, you can work it, and it doesn't have to be a Cinco. It could be any kind of Texas rig plastic worm, and you can just about work it just about anyway, and you're going to catch fish on it. So
That's
and
what I was
that's
guiding.
what it was all about this weekend. So
When I was guiding, that's how I would 90% of the time wacky rigged yum dingers,
yep,
because the yum dinger doesn't fall as quickly.
yep,
And I was fishing primarily riprap shoreline, so
hmm,
cast it on out there. Don't hit the rocks.
yep,
Cast it on out there. Don't hit the rocks.
yeah, because they'll come out to it.
Yes.
Just like they will, a chatterbait or a buzzbait or a spinner, anything that's making noise underwater, they're going to see that. They're still going to come out and get it.
That's why I like using small hooks with a wacky rig, because with something like a yum dinger, it falls very slowly. It just goes,
Yeah.
and that's most, when you think about most bass lures, they either target the top of the water or the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You have some square bills that target the midsection,
Right.
but most bass lures, that's why I like the yum dinger so much, and I'm not sponsored by them anymore.
Right. Well, and if you Texas rig them, they spiral.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you Texas rig them, they'll spiral and kind of do this as they spiral. So it's kind of this kind of motion as they go down. So I mean, bass love it.
Boy, I'm glad you told me that, because I sat there and watched the wacky rig worms go like this.
Mm-hmm.
Clint McClinton, just one of my good friends, a Facebook Live guy. He just checked in and said, "Yo, yo, yo."
Yep.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you. So, Clint, we're talking smallmouth bass with Rhonda Pitts here. Rhonda Pitts, a smallmouth bass expert from Arkansas.
I don't know about expert, but I sure like catching them.
Well, I don't know what it is about Southerners who are just so good at catching smallmouth bass. They're not that easy of a fish to catch.
Mm-mm.
They live in very specific places, so you have to kind of. I don't think a whole lot of. Yeah, Clint says he loves to see a woman fish. Absolutely, man. I have lots of women on my show. As long as you are, that's what I like about you, Rhonda. You're a fisher person.
Yes. Yeah. I am definitely an angler. Uh, but yeah, you're right. And one of the hardest things about fishing up north when you're a southerner is getting used to the clear water.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can see the smallmouth bass if you know what you're looking for, because they're pretty well camouflaged.
Yeah, Mille Lacs got the zebra mussels in it, and you
Yep.
can see to the bottom, and it's 40 feet, and you're like, "Holy crap! What am I getting?" So that's when you learn to make those really bomb casts. You got to get that lure out there, get it away from the boat, and you can work it all the way back, but you want to make sure you get it out there and get it away from the boat.
And also, the water's deeper than what you normally fish down south. So, man, after it hits the water, you have to keep your bail open, or you
Right.
have to be feeding it line, so it will go straight down rather than pendulum down.
Yep.
That's another thing that Southerners have to learn. Well, if you're targeting deep water, because I've caught a lot of smallmouth bass in 2 or 3 feet of water, but that's in moving water.
Right. Right. Yeah. Fishing a lake is a little different than fishing a river or
Yes.
a moving stream.
Very much different. Very much different. In fact, when I first started fishing for smallmouth in the Great Lakes, I was lost. Where are they? They're
They're,
not going to be on the weed lines. They're not going to be underneath the docks. Um, um,
yeah.
piles. Okay, let's go to rock piles. Then I caught nothing but walleyes.
Yep. Yep. Well, and the thing is that there a lot of times the smallmouth and the walleye are sharing territory.
Yes.
So, we've caught a lot of walleye on Mille Lacs targeting smallmouth.
Probably caught some very big walleyes doing that.
So we've got some pretty good ones. Yeah, I mean nothing massive, but yeah, pretty,
And
at least
Lake
good
Erie.
eating size.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are the best eating fish there is. Well,
Yeah.
they're not as good as yellow perch, but,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah. Did you catch any walleyes on Lake Erie too when you were there?
We've caught just about a little bit of everything on Lake Erie, except for a lake trout. We keep talking about going up in like October or November when it's cold and going lake trout fishing. So my buddy Mark Rose is like, "You need to come do this, Rhonda." I was like, "Yeah, I know. 5 meetings
Yeah,
I want to do
I don't
too."
think I drive 500 miles for lake trout there.
Yeah,
If they're not quite as, they don't fight as energetically
yeah.
as smallmouth
He,
bass.
my friend
They're not
Mark
as good
Rose.
at eating as walleyes. So, and if you want to catch a 12-pound walleye, October's the time to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
But okay, Lake Erie. How did you do for smallmouth bass on Lake Erie?
So we fish. I fished Erie multiple times. Sometimes we would make a trip up there and fish with my buddy Mark Rose. So we would go early when season opened, which season opening there is not until the end of May, 1st of June, really.
Yeah.
We would go and we would actually bed fish. We bed fish up there a lot. Um, in the winter time when we've gone in November and fished the Allegheny River also. And Utah,
Sure.
that is so much fun and it's beautiful. That river is absolutely gorgeous.
The Allegheny River in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Yes.
That man, that's raging water.
Yeah, yeah, it's got a lot of current in it too. So when you do catch a smallmouth, even if it's a 2-pounder, you think you've got a 5-pounder because they fight so hard. Which is kind of like the bass in the St. Lawrence. With all that current, they are so strong. It'll make you. They will fool you quick. You're hollering, "Get the net!" and you come and you're like, "Oh, well, it's just a
Yeah.
2-pounder." But
So when you were fishing in New Brunswick at the Team USA, for Team USA, was that a raging river too?
actually, where we were at, it had current, but it wasn't just massive current. It was I don't really know how to describe it. You could go upriver, cut your trolling motor off, and then let the river carry you back down. And
Oh, so it wasn't that bad. Yeah.
yeah, so it was a speed well enough that you could pick areas apart and fish, and not just zip right on by them. So yeah, so it was that was such an experience. I would love to go and do that again.
So the water, man, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So what's the river like? 200 feet wide, or
yeah, it was pretty wide where we were at.
and when you're targeting deep water?
No, we were targeting mostly, the 10 to 6 to 10, somewhere in there, because it was in October. So
Ooh,
the days were warming up enough so that the fish hadn't gone completely deep yet. So they were just kind of in that middle range, just right before.
October is always my favorite time to fish for smallmouth bass because up north the leaves are turning. Everybody's out in their deer stands.
Yeah.
I would be fishing because the smallmouth bass put their feed bag on right before it gets cold and stays cold.
Yeah, it was opening day of moose season.
Oof.
in Canada. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of folks but us on the water. So but yeah, we had a really good time.
But isn't that nice though? I mean, you're fishing a tournament, and there's not 200 other boats whizzing by you all the time.
Right, right. Yeah, it really was nice. The area that we had to fish in, we had off limits spots that we couldn't, you couldn't go down any further south than this. And but there was enough room on there for all of the country's teams, and you didn't feel crowded all day.
Wow. So you fished a major international tournament and you didn't feel crowded.
Right.
How many boats were in this tournament?
I think there were 10 countries, I believe there were represented, and we had, well, the USA had 4 teams. So,
So you were paired up with somebody?
yeah, I had my partner Emily Freeman and I won the ICAST Cup the year before.
Nice.
That qualified us to go and fish with Team USA.
Nice. You won the Outcast Cup. This story just keeps getting better. I feel like I got to do this podcast for like 3 hours.
Oh,
The
yeah.
ICAST Cup, that's down there in Florida, right around
Yeah.
Orlando, right?
In Kissimmee on Toho.
Ooh. Did you catch any 10-pounders down there?
Not me, but some of them did. I mean, there's a 3 fish limit because it's a 4-hour tournament. So there's a 3 fish limit for everybody. And I think the winning bag that day was like 20 something pounds.
3 fish.
Yeah.
I have the times I have gotten 20 some pounds, it's been a 5 fish.
Right.
And that's
guys,
that doesn't happen every tournament. Not for me anyways.
Yeah, I think they had like a 9 and an 8 and a 7 is what they had that day. So I mean, they come in with some hosses. So
even in Florida, how do I catch most of my fish? Well, wacky rigging. How do I catch most of my fish in Louisiana? Well, wacky rigging. Now, at least I'm branching out a little bit. I showed you that rod a little bit a while ago that had a chatterbait on it.
Yeah. So talking about chatterbait, Lita Bend last month, East Texas Lady Anglers had a tournament on Toledo Bend. Cold as all get out. It was a gray day. And we're coming in for weigh-in. And we go under a bridge and we notice that the bank has got concrete all around it.
Mm.
We're like, let's pull up here and throw at this because there might be hanging on this concrete.
Yes, it'll be warmer. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went under the bridge and turned and went back to the right. And the wind was blowing right in our face. And we fished about halfway down. And I said, let's turn around and go the other way and cross over. We turned the boat around, 2 casts. I hung a double digit.
You caught a 10-pounder.
I didn't catch it.
Oh.
She come up and showed herself and spit my chatterbait in my face.
How rude.
There was 20 minutes left before weigh-in. Yeah.
What'd you do?
Fire trucks and ship landed all over the lake from me, my mouth. And yeah, and we had at that point we had to go back and weigh in, and
yeah.
My husband Joe went and got the boat and trailer and backed it down, and he's looking at me, and I'm sitting there. He's looking at me in the side mirror, and I'm like, big one. My eyes were big, and he goes, "Did you catch it?" And I went, and that's all I could do. And then this is the only time, Jay, this has ever happened. The tears started, and
yeah.
I couldn't hold it any longer. I was sick about it. I mean,
tournament winning fish.
Yeah, tournament winning fish, and the one fish I would have won.
Yep.
And the Toledo Bend Lake Association has a program where if you bring the fish to an official weigh spot, and let them weigh and measure the fish and take 3 scales off of it. And then they go and release it back into the lake. They give you a free replica.
Oh,
Yeah,
we've all
oh,
we've all been there. You know, I was on Green Bay fishing a walleye tournament once, and we had enough. It was the second day. We had enough to be in to get a check. I was taking the walleyes out of the live well, and my partner was sitting there like this with the live bag. It came out. We had this little net to pull stuff out, and one flipped. It went. Whoosh.
yeah.
I looked at him, and he looked at me. He goes, "I'm never fishing with you again," and he meant it. That's fine. That's fine. Had you done the same thing, I wouldn't have done that to you.
Yeah.
That's what I told him. I wouldn't have done that to you. No.
Yeah.
Man, that kind of stuff happens, you know.
It just does, and it's part of fishing. I mean, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I still have nightmares about it. Hey, Sarge.
Yeah, Sarge just said hello to Rhonda from Fishing Arkansas on Big Sarge 103.7 The Buzz, which I guess airs Sunday 8:30 to 10 a.m.
Yep.
Vince says we love you, Rhonda Pitts. Man, thank you so much for checking in there, Vince.
Appreciate
Vince sounds like a fun person to listen to.
Saturday at the Bass Pro Shop.
Oh, you were on a show?
So Saturday, Sarge and me and one other guy, Drop Shot Eugene Moore, will be at the Little Rock Bass Pro Shop doing bait techniques in the tank.
Oh, how much fun is that?
Yeah, 11 to 2.
11 to 2, folks. Okay, tell us what city is this going to be in?
Little Rock.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock,
Bass
Arkansas.
Pro Shops.
Bass
Pro Shops. Remember that, guys. Little Rock, Arkansas, Bass Pro Shops.
And I have pulled out a bait. I hadn't even told Sarge what I'm bringing. I have pulled out a bait that Strike King had stopped selling at one point, but they just brought it back this year. So I actually saw them at the Classic. They had them at the Classic.
Nice. Nice. Can you tell us what bait this is, or is this a big secret?
It's a king shad.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Yeah, I love the king shad top water.
Top water. Ooh, yeah, you were saying you like to fish top water.
Yeah. Wake bait.
Oh, never used a wake bait. I'm not big on top water, but that's just a gap in my knowledge.
If you ever catch a fish on top water, it will hook you immediately.
Oh, I've caught hundreds of them, you know. Actually, that was my favorite way to catch hybrid stripers, but with the walking the dog.
Yeah. Yep.
The Zera puppies,
Yep. Zera puppy, Zera spook, frog. I
still catch a lot of speckled trout with the Zera puppies.
Yeah.
I loved, most. How are you doing that? Like it takes a while. Learn how to do it.
Yeah, and you got to figure out the cadence they want that day too.
Stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they come up and say, I got one underneath it. Don't stop.
Yeah.
Most people, they get so excited they stop and no. Or they see it swirl and they set the hook and then you just have a Zera spook flying back at you.
Yeah. No.
2 sets of trebles coming flying right at your face. That's great.
Yeah.
It's happened. I do like the.
I actually got to do surgery on the water during the LBAA Classic last year on Grand Lake in Oklahoma.
Oh.
Paula Wilson got a jerk bait right here.
I hate treble hooks. Ooh.
I do too.
Guiding for so many years, I had, I learned what every other guide learns. Don't use treble hooks when you're guiding.
No.
You have kids in the boat, do not use treble hooks. When you have adults who don't know how to fish, don't use treble hooks.
No. because inevitably somebody's going to get one.
I have been down here in a charter boat with two other writers and a bait company owner. Five of us in the lake in the boat. Everybody's casting the whole day. Everybody's casting like this.
Mm-hmm.
Not one person got hooked. Hundreds of fish landed. Oh, well, the Gulf of Mexico is just on a different scale. There's a lot
Yeah,
more.
it really,
And we caught so many fish. Not one person got hooked. And even the guy was remarking about that. He's like, I was kind of worried about this. Well, you got 5 guys in here who know how to fish.
yeah. Joe and I, my husband and I, were on a boat with a guy down in Florida. No, actually, this was in Texas on Lake Monticello before they closed it down. And we were fishing, and we were catching. We caught 150 fish in one spot one day on Lake Monticello. And the guy looked at us, he goes, "Do you know y'all cast in tandem?" And we were like, "What?" He goes, "Y'all cast in tandem. It's like this side cast and then this side cast and then this side cast and then this side cast." And I said, "Well," Joe and I were talking about it. It's like, well, that comes from fishing out of a 14-foot John boat with
Yes.
7-foot rods. And that's what you have to learn to do. So,
Yes.
and now it's just automatic. We just automatically do it when we get in the boat together.
And about the top water, I fished the BFL for a couple of years as a co, and you just learn not to use the same thing that your pros using.
Yeah.
And I learned not to cast where he had to blow up. That bass is still there, and if it's his bass,
Right.
but if that thing's hitting top water, if I'm throwing a wacky rig, even 30 feet in back of him,
you can get it. You'll be the cleanup crew.
It's the Northland. It's not muddy water like there is. Well, Mississippi can get very, very muddy, but
Yeah.
most of the time it was clear water up there. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And Lake Monticello, 100 some bass. Were those all bass?
Yes.
Wow. When you said 100 some fish, I was thinking stripers or white bass.
No. It was all largemouth bass.
Wow.
Hey, and we just pulled up and tied off, and we didn't move all day.
You pulled up, tied off, got over 100 bass.
Yeah, and I want to say we didn't catch anything. I know we didn't catch anything lighter than 2 pounds. It may have been nothing lighter than 3 pounds.
That's on a different scale than like most bass lakes.
Yeah. I mean,
about all of them.
Yeah, and it's closed now. So it was it's a hydraulic lake, power plant lake, and
man, I fished. Okay.
Yeah.
Lake. Yeah. In Illinois, I would catch those kind of numbers at the power plant lakes in Illinois. Some of them.
You're right. And so power plant sold. They closed the lake down, so you can't even get on it now. And it's been closed for several years.
One of the best lakes around where I used to live in Illinois, it was a power plant lake, and they dismantled the power plant, but the state of Illinois bought it, and now it's one of their best fisheries in northern Illinois.
So my thought is no one has been able to fish this lake for at least, I know it had to be at least 5 years. Can you imagine the fish that are in it now?
No, I can't. If there was that kind of
going to waste, we need to find somebody to open it up.
And the state of Texas is usually so heads up when it comes to their bass fishery.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the Texas Shearlunker program, which is just second to none. I mean, I am so impressed by that. 13.5 pounds. It has to be 13.5 pounds before they'll even come and get it.
Yeah.
Wow. 13.5 pounds.
Yeah. So the 838 that I caught in tournament last year on Sam Rayburn qualified for the Shearlunker program. So, they didn't want to come get it, but we turned it in and they wanted to know where we caught it, where I caught it, and all the things. And then you get, I forgot what they call it, but anyway, you get like a goodie bag, they send to you. It's got like a Shearlunker cup and some baits and, different things in it and so then you're in the Shearlunker club. So And if you take 3 scales off your fish, they give you a little envelope, and you can mail the 3 scales in, and they'll do a genetics testing on the scales to see where the fish came from.
You know,
See if, who it's a descendant from.
I had the executive director on this show of the Share Lunker program. She says every fish that they've ever spawned, it has to be 13 and a half pounds before they'll do that, before they'll come and get it and spawn it. Every fish they've ever spawned has been 100% Florida strain.
Yeah.
But that's 13 and a half pounders or better.
Yeah.
The state of Texas is just next level, man. I wish, I've told the every time I run into somebody from the Louisiana LDWF,
Yeah.
we all could learn something from Texas.
Exactly. I don't understand why Arkansas Game and Fish is not doing it.
Yeah. If you build it, they will come. It's just, look at Bussy Break. You can't even get on the Bussy Break anymore because so many people are going there.
Seen what they've been catching on Bussy in the last 2 weeks? Every day I get multiple posts from Bussy Break where they've caught anywhere, any kind of double digit, from 10 to 13 pounds every day, and it's multiple fish every day.
A good friend of mine was up there 2 weeks ago, and he said he missed something. It looked like it was 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And he kept going back because he was going to be there for months. This guy's retired. He just fishes. Man, he said, every day I had my chance because, it'd be like just constant rotation in and out of that spot. Guys coming in and out, and, there's just a big rotation around that whole lake. But he said every time he's ever been there, he's caught an 8-pounder or better.
Yeah.
Said, it's not easy fishing, and when you hook into a fish, you got to get him away from those trees, or he's going to break you off. Catch a 9-pounder, and he's got 2 hooks in his mouth because he broke somebody off.
Yeah, I guarantee you, I'd be fishing 65-pound braid.
Yeah, tied direct.
Yes. Yeah, I don't care what bait it would be. I'm going to do 65-pound braid.
Yep. 65 brings them in alive.
Yeah, we actually drove down there one day just to kind of see the lake, and it's worse than Fork. Yep,
as far as number of fishermen.
What? No, as far as number of trees.
Oh yeah. You gotta be real careful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you have to be really careful out there, and that's another reason you want to go that straight braid and make sure you haul some suckers in the boat with you.
Have some big beefy rods.
Yeah.
Well, to handle 65-pound braid, you need a big beefy rod.
There you go.
That guy says, "Well, what are you catching those things on?" Sankos.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
I'd
like to use something else once in a while, but just keep, unless it's really windy, and then I, get on my chatterbaits.
Yeah. Well, Gary Yamamoto designed those, and he knows a thing or two about fishing.
He sure does. He fills them with sand.
Yeah.
That's what I like about him. You can throw a Senko a country mile, where, now I like to use the Missile Baits 48.
Yeah.
It's a little different profile. I can work it a little differently. But I can't skip it like I can skip a Senko. They last longer than Senkos do.
Yeah.
But I don't care. One Senko, one fish. If it's a 4-pounder, I don't care.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll pay the extra money for a 4-pounder.
Yeah.
Please,
any day of the week.
Yeah, please. Well, hey, I've really had a good time talking to you, but it's 45 after the hour. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to do?
So shout out to all my sponsors. Thank you so much. Luz, Seagar, Baheo, Fish Her, Yellowtech, Gajo, Great Lakes Finesse, Yellowtech Woo, Rapala, and Crush City. I think I named all of them.
Crush City. Yeah, nice stuff.
Yeah, I love them. And, thanks to my husband, the good Lord above. And, without the support of the family, I couldn't go do what I do.
Absolutely. People ask me what it takes to make it in this business. I said, you have to have a strong job. Doesn't mind you being gone. You have to have even a stronger spouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're missing one element, you're going to lose them both.
Yep. So I work 4 days a week in another city. And so I don't really have a lot of time at home. So, it's super nice. When I do have a tournament coming up, Joe has an extra day off during the week. And so he will actually, okay, what do you want to take this weekend? And, what baits do you want? And so he can, he builds most of that for me while I'm, 80 miles away.
There you go. You need to have a spouse who supports you.
Yeah. And, I couldn't do it without him. Mr. Gene, I am glad you stopped by too. And you talk about a smallmouth hammer. Look up some of Gene Elkins' pictures. He
Wow.
knows.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for stopping by, Mr. Gene. I appreciate you. I appreciate all. Actually, that brings me to my next topic. I'd like to thank you, Rhonda. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to our folks here at the Let's Talk Fishing podcast. And also, I'd like to thank everybody like Mr. Gene and Mr. Vince who stopped by and say hi. Love you guys, man. Love you guys.
Absolutely.
I couldn't do it without my listeners. And Rhonda, I certainly can't do this without people like you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And let's do it again, Jay.
Well, absolutely, man. I had a great time talking to you. And guys, man, it is Wednesday up there in the Northland. We're done with the spawn down here. But it's time for me to start going down and fishing for speckled trout on the coast. I'm going to be out there, And I say this at the end of every show. In your last days, when you're sitting there talking to your spouse, you're not going to be talking about the great times you had watching Breaking Bad or The Big Bang Theory. You're not going to be talking about that. You're not going to be talking about the stupid games you played on your phone. You're going to be talking about the great experiences you had. And one of the greatest experiences that there is hooking into a big fish.
Amen. Making memories.
Absolutely. Make the memories. Make the memories. Make the memories. All right. And thank you very much. With that, I'm going to end the show. Rhonda, please stick around for a couple minutes after I end the show.
Absolutely.